Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bay Area Content Marketing Meetup. Today's topic is something near and dear to my heart, personal branding. We're going to talk about how to build a personal brand and make an impact with content marketing. So two things that are very near and dear to my heart. Our speaker today is Meg Prejzner, an award-winning brand strategist, and she's founder of Hackett Brand Consulting. A personal brand is not just a self-promotion tool for thought leaders and influencers. It's a strategic asset in today's interconnected world built on reputation and what people know about you. In a crowded job market or competitive business landscape, a personal brand can be the very thing that distinguishes you from everyone else. Meg is going to talk about a number of things: how to identify your uniqueness, define your target audience, tell your story effectively, and create and plan content for the right channels. Meg, thanks for joining us, and take it away.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And thanks for that intro. I appreciate it. It was great to hear some of your guys' background as well. I would invite everybody to chime in with questions as we go. No need to hold to the end. I'll also try to keep an eye on chat for those who maybe I'm in the middle of a sentence and don't want to interrupt. Feel free to throw in the chat as well. I will walk through a presentation so you guys have something to look at the screen and react to. But like Dennis said, we're all about personal branding here. And so a little bit about my background. I do run an award-winning brand and marketing agency. It's what I've been doing for more than 15 years. I've worked with everybody from Fortune 50 companies, global names like Intel, Micron, SAP, as well as national franchise brands, Floyd's 99, Qdoba, Unity Road, across more than 24 industries. So I've worked with over 100 brands. And this also goes down to independent entrepreneurs, global thought leaders, the whole kind of gamut for us here. So where I am leaning today is this idea of personal brand and how we can help grow that through content marketing. And so I love to cue everything up with why personal branding, right? Like, let's make the case for it, because you mentioned that, or Kevin mentioned there's this whole idea, and it's kind of like gets really convoluted of like, what is personal brand? Sometimes people think personal brand is in influencers, and you're like, do I have to be this 22-year-old Alex Earl who pops on the screen? And the answer is no. So towards the end, we'll talk about content marketing, how your personal brand really is tied to your reputation and doesn't necessarily go hand in hand with influencers, though it could, right? But it is all about this human connection for us. And so it's time to let your voice be heard. So this really kind of the first thing I cue up is, no matter your audience size, your stage of business, whether you're a startup or you're doing consulting or your established company, your current job title. So this even goes for careers and professions, your niche, your experience, your industry, or even if you don't know your exact message, it's time to let yourself be heard. Creating a personal brand is really about building, starting, and making an impact by understanding your unique thing, or like, what is your one thing that helps you stand out from others? But more than that, it's about how do you use that to connect with people on a deeper level. And so the reason I cue this up is because I really believe personal brand can extend beyond even entrepreneurs or marketers or influencers. And so this can go, I've actually done quite a bit of work with thought leaders who are executives in their space, or they want to make themselves known as a marketer or somebody in machine learning, or they really want to be kind of the authority in their space. And this can also help you kind of leverage and get your next position, or it can help you grow into your next role, those promotional pieces. And so a lot of people, again, kind of think of personal brand as it relates to influencers, but I argue that it's all about this reputation and really creating a personal reputation and a deeper connection with people that can help you propel to that next level. And we all have a story to tell. And that doesn't mean we need to rip apart the deep interconnectedness of traumas that we've been through. It can simply relate to, I'm Meg the marketer, and that's the story that I want to tell. And so the case for personal branding and really brands at large, I think what's really interesting is in 2020, and it's been 3 years since then, more than 59 zettabytes of data were created, captured, copied, consumed. There's so much data around. And as marketers, it's so like easy for us to, and when you're thinking about content marketing, to be like, how many impressions did that have? How many people viewed the websites? How long did they read this article? And you get into this data. And there's so much that like, then you can go deeper and start tracking UTM codes. You can start tracking like how deep do people go on your website? You can have the open rates of emails and content, and it just gets so overwhelming, especially if you're here to start. But really, at the heart of this is that with 59 zettabytes of data, 59% of customers or people feel that brands have lost touch with the human element of customer experience. And I find it intriguing that kind of these two stats, both 59, but two stats is like, despite all of this data, despite all of this information coming at you, despite that we have AI and machine learning, and we have systems that are pumping out more and more information towards us at our fingertips, and even just like in our phones right here, people feel more disconnected than ever with brands. They know that they're just, hi, insert first name, thanks for enrolling today. And it feels very disingenuous. And really, really, I am not surprised. So, the data we're measuring. So if we're looking at content marketing, and I appreciate you Googling the zettabyte, because this is kind of a joke. I'm like, I have no idea how many zeros are in a zettabyte.
Well, I was looking for a metaphor or more something substantive, but I looked at that. I'm like, that's a lot.
Yeah. It's like, you have no idea. It's like the concept of million versus billion. Like million is like 11 days, and to count to billion would be like 30 years or something like that. Don't quote me on that exact stat, but it's kind of that concept. And so like, if we're looking at zettabytes, like forget it. But there's tons of information, and being in San Francisco, where all these like huge companies are based, they own so much of the world's data just in one state alone, right? Like, there's so much that we're measuring. And then when you put this and you really distill this down into content marketing, you're like, all right, we're going to look at the information coming in. How do we get more people buying a product, or how do we reach more people on social media, or how do we improve our customer experience, whether that's online or brick and mortar? We have a tendency, myself included, to try to distill it down into numbers that are really digestible and can be understood, and for good reason. When you're looking at all of that information, it's like, what do I do with this, right? And so here's just two examples of funnels or experiences for people like that, I think are interesting. And it's, on the left hand, a customer experience. You have pre-purchase, purchase, post-purchase, right? So if we're talking about a startup, or like, how do we get more people to become aware of our product, purchase our product, become more loyal, advocacy, we often think about it in terms of like, what are we doing with direct mail, PR, email, marketing, promos, etc. And then you pull them further down this funnel. This funnel may or may not be surprising to some people. I think in the marketing world, everybody has this funnel of like from the top down, where you're like, first is awareness, next is all the way through to loyalty, conversion, loyalty, etc. But really, I think what's important is that with all of this data, we're forgetting the very thing that we're measuring, and that's humans. And really, it's like, we're talking about like teachers. We're talking about Sam, the teacher who's going back to school. She needs to possibly pull money out of her own pocket to fund the decorations in her classroom. She's taking time from her personal life to go to track meets. We have Meg, the mom, who is a toddler working from home, running a business, getting her kid into school. And then we have, Matt, the hiker. So when he's buying a new backpack or new hiking boots, he is not just worried about the brand. He's worried about quality. He's worried about the trail. He's worried about how long this can last. He's worried about loyalty. Does it give back to the environment that he serves, right? And so I see coming here, people seem more interested in just gathering your personal data than selling the product. And it's true. I think that's very true, because when we look at data, we're so consumed with like, how many views did that get? How many impressions did that get? How many people actually purchased this product? What's that through? And now, like, as a business owner, like, we need to make money, right? Like, I'm not going to be like, oh no, pretend like the dollars and cents don't matter, because they absolutely do. But it is to say that, like, collecting that personal data, collecting that personal information, is, we're talking about humans. Like, these are real people. And I know there's a lot of us on this planet, but we're talking about the emotional impact side of this. We're talking about the people. And a story that I love to tell is that my husband went to go to Chipotle for lunch one day, and he shows up, their machine's not working to collect credit cards. So he left and he drove like a mile down the road to go get Qdoba. And when he went to Qdoba, they were just so slammed and so overwhelmed, like, because all these people who had decided in their head that they wanted to eat a burrito went a mile down the road to get Qdoba. Now, I live in Denver. I live in a place where, like, he had to pass, next door to Chipotle was 2 restaurants, Tokyo Joe's, and then a sit down, like, kind of restaurant that you can't just like take the food to go. He had to pass Wendy's, he had to pass McDonald's, he had to pass a salad place. He probably passed about 25 restaurants on the way to Qdoba. And then he shows up there and there's this line out the door, and you can tell that the employees are overwhelmed and they're like, holy crap, what's happening? And I laugh because as a marketer, they all of a sudden see this huge jump in sales from the day, and they're like, what happened over here? And as a marketer, you're probably like, yep, it's that email I sent out. I just know it. I know we sent a coupon and people came in, or like, it's that ad that started running this day, or this radio start. And you're looking at the data, but it's such a simple example of like forgetting that, like, there was just a bunch of humans who had a craving for a burrito. They decided on a burrito, and they were willing to bypass all these other restaurants on the way to go and get that burrito. And that's a very human experience. And so as that relates to a brand in particular, is that people want to connect with people and they want to feel connected with. So even though as a brand or business, you're connecting this data, people still are real. We're humans. We're having a human experience. And when you look at people who have built these or amassed these huge followings, right? These are people with 5 million, 4 million. Mel Robbins on LinkedIn has 232,000, but she has millions on other platforms, right? These might be household names for most of us on this call. When you look at their profiles on LinkedIn, Mel Robbins has 232,000 followers. She's, of course, this huge speaker, has a huge podcast, and she only has 3,000 followers on her business page on LinkedIn. Same with Brene Brown, 4 million people connected with Brene Brown, 81,000 followers on her business page on LinkedIn. Gary Vaynerchuk, the same, 5 million on LinkedIn, and he's probably got like 50 million across the board. But he has 81,000 on his brand page. And so I think I pull these numbers up because whether it's 5 million or 500,000 or 5,000 or 500 or 50, people want the person and they're connected and drawn to the person. And I think this is a really interesting look at how people are connecting, especially now that information is at your fingertips and you can access this anywhere via any kind of content platform, right? So we're talking blogs, podcasts, social media. You can do YouTube videos. You can have your own show. You can have email. There's so many ways to show up. It's about really being human and showing the human side of that connection. And so as a brand, whether you're building a brand as a business or you're building your personal brand, we have to start to change this conversation around what it means to build a brand. And we have to connect with one another as humans and not just these data points. Data can reinforce decisions. Data can make the case for the new startup and this networking group, et cetera. But needs to be fostered in building real connections, cultivating and growing relationships, building trust, and being humans ourselves. So for the rest of this conversation, I'm really going to dive into like, how do we do this? And this is coming from a brand person. I've built brands for a living. And I think at the end of the day, it's all about kind of really becoming a human and connecting with other humans and getting back to the uniqueness of that. And so we'll talk about identifying your uniqueness, how do we define our target audience? And then how do we tell our story effectively to that audience in a way that connects, that doesn't just look at them as an impression or a lead, but actually creates a connection and fosters community? And then how do we choose the right channels and the right content marketing for us when there's so many out there? So I'm going to dive in, but I'll pause in case there's any questions. I'll give it a few seconds. Otherwise, I'll just keep rolling. I can't see everybody's faces, so forgive me on that. All right. So how do we actually do this? Like I always like to say that, like, Meg, this is great in theory. What you're talking about is awesome. However, like, what does this actually mean for me, the real life human, in practice? And so in short, people are looking for leaders. They really are looking for that person that they can feel connected to, that they can relate to, somebody who inspires them. And I like the really tip top of this is a person who they can aspire to be like. They want, at the heart of it all, it's that thing that they feel connected to, is that same thing that makes the leader stand out. And that thing that they're connected to is looking at that person being like, wow, that person did that. I can do it too. And I see you saying people want someone who can solve their problems. Like, absolutely. That's exactly it. They're like, hey, this person is 10% ahead. This person has done this. This person can show me a different way. Whatever that may be, whether it's an independent content creator, an entrepreneur, somebody who wants to create a big, if you want to become the next Mel Robbins, you're looking to those people who you can aspire to be like, who not only inspire you, but you're like, yes, this can be me too. And I can solve this problem thanks to you. And so when it comes to your brand and you as the leader, you want to think about what is your one thing. And the reason I say one thing is because otherwise you kind of ping pong around and you're like, over here doing this. We're whole people. We show up, and I think there's a place for that whole story, and I'll get into that. But really what we want to do is identify what is the one thing that is going to make people connect with us above the next Meg next door. Why am I drawn to Mel Robbins and putting her up there? We'll see you, Floyd. It seems like you're awesome. Thanks for coming. I hope you have a great rest of your day. So to come back to your one thing, why am I drawn to Mel Robbins? Why am I putting Gary Vaynerchuk up there? Why am I drawn to those people? And then similar for yourself, why are you drawn to the people that you're connected to? How can you also embody and become the person that can aspire, inspire, and connect with other people? And so really the first piece is your story. So far. And I say so far because it's like your story to date. This is the qualifier. This is like when you are watching people and they're like, hey, this is what I do X, Y, Z. I have 15 years of experience in this industry. I'm the leading expert in this. This is your story so far. It's why you're qualified. And whether you're connecting as a keynote speaker and you are, talking about overcoming past challenges, or you are in the field of marketing and you want to say, hey, I've worked with all these big brands, or you're a teacher who's become a principal, who's become an admin, and now you're helping lead a total different education system. This is why you're qualified to date. And it's not just that, but it's also your vision of the future. How do you see the world differently and where it's going? So we have this qualifier. Then we have the inspiration and the aspiration for a world that can be different because of your learned experiences. So because I've been through all this, because I've done all of this, I can also see the world a different way and help you do it too. And that's the impact piece. The impact piece is how you help others transform. It's that value for the people. What are they getting? And in this kind of whole group of these three things is where you're going to identify your one thing. And that is because you have your only unique experiences. You're only you have your own lived experiences. And so only you can tell your story so far. I haven't lived it. Dennis hasn't lived it. And you have a unique vision for the future that's totally different than mine as well. And because of that combination, you can help people in a way that's different than how I could, than Dennis could, than Craig could, etc. And so when this is in practice, in essence, what we really want to do is get so simplified on your one thing that you can distill it down into one word. And so on the brand side of things, when you're building a brand essence can often kind of come down to one or two sentences, right? It's like this feeling of freedom. It's this feeling of empowerment. It's this feeling of attainability. It's this feeling of innovation, right? When you think of Apple, at least Apple as it was, it's innovation. And so it's really, how can you distill everything down into the most simple one word feeling? And then, of course, we need to expand on that, right? So we want to say, what's your one thing in one sentence? This is going to become your brand message. And this is how all of those pieces, all of those stories we have to tell, your vision for the future, the impact come together. And you're going to write your sentence as if one thing. And you can think of this like, because I've done X, Y, and Z, I know the future can be X, Y, and Z. So I'm going to X, Y, and Z. And you can almost break it down into those three parts and create a sentence in the real, like, practical sense of the word, right? If we're going to be like, Meg, this is great. Like, what does this actually mean in practice? So this could be like, for me, and now I'm speaking off the cuff, forgive me if this is not eloquent, but like, hi, I'm Meg. I've been leading marketing and brands from national to global brands for 15 years. I've worked with more than 100 brands. I believe the future of marketing is in creating connection and community. So I am helping people build businesses that connect with individuals as humans. And that becomes that. And then what is my one word? Maybe it's human. I would probably go more towards a feeling that's like aspirational, inspirational. This is a great question of how does a brand message align to a mission statement? So the essence of your brand is really kind of the story. It is everything that you wrap everything around. Typically, you don't share this externally without a little bit of refinement. Some people share mission, vision, value statements externally. And so a vision statement at large is going to be your look at the future. A mission statement is going to be what you serve and how you're going to make that happen. So you're on a mission to that. It's kind of the different segments of what exactly we're talking about. So if a vision is like, this is the simplest way to write a vision. And I put those hand in hand because I think they work really well together. A vision is you can write a vision statement saying, my look at the future is, my vision for the future is, and then you insert like what, and it can be really idealistic, right? Like, my vision for the future is a world where mental health is taken seriously and everybody has free and equal access to that. Mental health is important to me, so that's probably why it comes top of mind. My mission then is how I do that, how I bring that to life. Now that's different than, like the one thing, if I were to create a mission-driven company or mission-driven initiative and my personal brand to help mental health advocacy, my story may be like, hey, because I've been through X, Y, and Z, and I've overcome those challenges, I know that it's possible to unlock a future that's better in mental health, and where if people have access to it, they can change the trajectory of their life. And so I'm working to do that in the future. So that could be my one thing as an individual, which is very different than what I mentioned about the vision and mission, because in short, to separate the two, the personal brand essence is going to be very intrinsic, internal to who you are. And then how you develop a vision and a mission statement become the external facing viewpoint of that. So again, kind of, I like to layer. So I like to talk really high level, and then we're like, okay, so if we understand our one thing, we know why we're here. We know exactly what our vision and mission is, and we know what our one thing is and how we want to bring that to life. who in the heck are we talking to? Right. And so we want to define our target audience. And so I like to use a Target example here, because to effectively reach your audience, you want to get so specific on who you're targeting that you can feel like that single vision, that single one person is in the room with you. And so, and the idea of like a startup, who is your ideal investor? And if they were to sit down on a couch with you and say, hey, let's chat about this, who is that person? What do they embody? Who are they as a human? So of course, we want to look at the data, the demographics, their age range, where they live, who they work for, et cetera. But what are the other elements that actually make them a human? What has led them to this point in their life? How do they speak? How do they dress? How do they show up? How are you connecting with them on a deeper level than like, hi, John Doe, 54 male, 5'5" in San Francisco? Like, how are you going to connect with that John Doe who comes in and is like, hey, I've had a really bad day. I was watching my granddaughter last night. She didn't sleep. I didn't sleep, etc. And so the target of this is that the idea is like, if you can narrow in on a very specific pinpointed person in the middle, then you can expand outwards from there. And if you put this into an example of, let's use Gatorade. Gatorade is most of their money comes from general sales at like grocery store level, right? Convenience stores, etc. When you watch their commercials and when you see their brand, they are specifically targeting the elite of the elite athletes. We're talking LeBron James, we're talking Olympians. They're showing these like elite athletes who I will never be, sweating and performing to their best. Then you have college athletes and high school athletes who are like, well, if this is good enough to refuel the best of the best, this is good enough for me. And so they want to be drinking what the best of the best are. And then by extension of that, the moms are going out buying the Gatorade for their high school students. They're buying Gatorade for soccer kids who are 12 playing. But they also then stock the shelves with Gatorade at your local grocery store. And you have me, Meg, the non-athlete, buying that on a random Saturday because maybe I want something different than water. But they're so pinpointed on that one person and that idea of person who they're targeting that it helps them expand outward. I love the nod to the Simon Sinek Start with Why. Very familiar with his work. I actually went through some of his work a long time ago. But I think the target definitely helps with that. I think
I know it's a little
so
dated, but
he talks a lot about like the why
Yeah.
element, the why
it's dated, but I hear a lot of what you're saying. It's like, yeah, this is how you go about it. Really useful. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think it's true. It can translate to like that person, right? Like if you're talking. And so getting really specific on who you're serving. And it's not everybody. Like maybe eventually, like you want everybody to use your app. Everybody's on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. But you want to have a very specific idea. Like when Pinterest started, it was exclusive and you had to be invited to join Pinterest. And then it was very targeted on who they were joining. And then now it's, of course, open to the masses and marketers, et cetera, alike. So once you know that, like once you have this idea of the person you're serving, is then you can start to tell your story effectively because you're envisioning this person on the other end. So just even in this conversation, chatting with everybody here, it makes it easier to see your faces or to see your names on the screen than if I was just talking into my own camera. It almost feels like I'm talking at myself. and so you guys are here and I can see you. And so you're like, okay, like if I know that I'm talking to this one person, how can I tell that story really effectively? And it's being clear. Clarity is huge. So are you being clear and concise? This is coming back to your one thing. What is it that is that one thing? I, in a former career, did a lot of public relations. And the biggest media training we did was always have 1 to 2 messages that you come back to, because if they ask you about competitors or if you get tripped up on screen, or maybe you're just nervous you're like, oh man, I forgot everything. It just fell out of my brain. Like you can come back to those 1 or 2 messages. And so make sure that you're really clear and concise when you are telling your story, and it all wraps around the same idea. Consistency. So consistency drives recognition. I'm a believer that quality is definitely important, but sometimes quantity drives quality. Like the more you do it, the more you get comfortable, the more you tell your story, the more you get comfortable, the more you show up, the more you get comfortable, and you get better and better at speaking, at sharing, at writing, right? Nobody, like, I don't know, maybe not nobody, but it would be rare to sit down and write a book and have it be your bestseller right off the get without any editors, without any like going back and modifying it. So the more and more you work on it, the better you become, right? So consistency and showing up is huge. And then relatability, right? So does your audience feel like you're being honest? Are they being authentic? Are they being salesy? Are you being you? This looks different for everybody, right? What's relatable. So Gary Vaynerchuk, in my example, he shows up with like a t-shirt, dude's a billionaire, and he shows up like t-shirt, jeans, and swears. Like that's his thing. And he probably puts off a lot of people because of it. On the other hand, he probably attracts people because of it, because he's being himself. He also just shares an incredible amount of value with nothing in return. He just puts so much out there, and he's not like, Meg, come buy my program. I just follow him because I like his business ideas, but I might be Meg, the VP of marketing at XYZ company. And when I want to do paid media marketing, I'm going to hire VaynerMedia as a result of that. And so in his relatability, and there's different people for everybody. I think that's the beauty of the world we live in, is like, if you are super into Harry Potter, and specifically like a Harry Potter fanatic, like you can connect with people on that level if that's real. That may not relate to me, who like is not a Harry Potter fanatic. And we see this with Taylor Swift, who's like swept the world this year. Like she has a whole Swiftie group by like being herself. And I am not as Swiftie, but like it's interesting to watch that evolve in the world. And now what I don't include here are like things like hooks, timing, etc. Like, because I think once you get into it, like there's so many different channels. We could talk for the next 9 months on it. But like subject lines, A/B testing, etc. So really, I think at the top level, the highest level is being clear, consistent, and relatable with your story as you show up. Sorry about the line here. How do we show up for our audience then? So we know that one person, we know we want to be clear, we know we want to be consistent, and we know we want to create connection. Relatability is about connection. How do we answer the question of what's in it for them? Why are they listening? What do we look like when we show up? What do we wear? What's right for us? What's our tone? What do we talk about? And most importantly, how can we help? The how can we help piece really comes back to that impact for that audience. So how can we help them? And the reason I like this is because you're thinking about value from the end user. You're thinking about like in their point of decision, if you're going to lunch, they're hungry, they want food that's not going to make them sick, they want a clean restaurant. Those are just kind of like baseline table stakes. So why choose McDonald's over Wendy's? How are they going to make your life easier? Is it affordability? Is it better food? Is it better service? Some of those are just like literally table stakes. Some of it's convenience. But I think the relatability and like, how do we connect with? And these are different answers for each of us as we build our own personal brands. This looks different for everybody. So in the Gary Vaynerchuk example of dudes wearing gym shoes and jeans and t-shirts to speak on stage, that may not work for somebody who shows up as a suit and tie as a doctor. And it's not to change who you are. So a little personal anecdote is when I first started my business, I had the biggest pitch like to date at that time. And every video that we had, or every meeting we had so far was like pre-COVID. The video was off. We're connecting on Zoom. We're just chatting the way you would a conference call like 5 years ago. And then the call, he's like, okay, before we do this final meeting, and it's like, we're going to meet with the brand president. And the brand president of this, like, he's got like 9 offices across the world. He turned on his video, of course. And he's got a suit and tie. He's a doctor. He's a suit and tie. And the woman next to him is in like full business suit. And because every video had been off today, I was wearing a hoodie and I had just gotten out of the shower and I was backlit. And I was like, of course, this is the time. And so, you know, in that moment, I was like, this is me. This is who I am. I show up to meetings in hoodies to this day. Like when I meet with clients, I'm wearing hoodies. I'm probably barefoot. It just is who I am as a person. And I was like, so if they're going to work with me, number one, I'm not going to wear a suit in my home office. It's just not how I'm going to show. I don't even own that. But being honest, I don't own it. I have not owned that in like 15 years. That's not me. And so like, if they don't like that, then we're probably not going to be good working partners together. And so I turned on the video and I was like, here I am. This is what it is in this moment. And I did wind up like working with them for 2 years, and it was like multi-6-figure contract, and all is well. So I love that kind of antidote of like being true to yourself, being true to what makes you comfortable, and like showing up. And of course there's a time and a place, but it's all about like what's in it for them, what's that value, and then what is your personal brand in a way that's relatable and again feels really comfortable. I don't know the Twitter mission statement Dennis posted about way back when, but I'll have to pull that up. I don't want to click it because I feel like I'm going to ruin everything, but appreciate this drill down memory lane. Okay, so with all of this, I know I've thrown a lot at you. We're talking really high level about building our personal brands. This is where I really want to get into like the right channels for you. And Kevin, you mentioned SEO and authority and personal branding, and how you could have somebody who's really great at creating authority come in and write a bunch of content as you, and all of a sudden your SEO is boosted and your traffic is boosted. And so it's like really, you know, as we define our personal brand, including how and where we show up, we have to remember that the message is more important than the medium. And so some people do have ghostwriters and that's cool, and they can help like drive traffic to your website. But what's important is that it's the message. It holds true to the core of your personal brand and the brand that you're trying to build and that future you're trying to build. Because whether you are showing up on social media or you are showing up at an in-person video, if you're showing up on a blog, an email, and you're doing it well, then you can really bring everybody together in that. Like that, the medium is the message. So I showed you the actual customer journey earlier or the customer journeys, those funnels that we saw before. This is what I would beg is the actual customer journey. So users, like, it's no longer like you just have television and you have 579 and you put on a commercial and everybody in the world sees it, right? Like there's so many different streaming platforms, so many different social media platforms, so many different websites, et cetera, that the actual customer journey kind of bounces around in a little bit of a different action. So you could argue, you know, here's this kind of top level funnel of like pulling people down of introduction, awareness, interest, but things bounce around a little bit differently, right? So you have the way audiences behave on the platform, the way brands behave on the platform, content creators and third parties. And so often, if you think about it in terms of like a review, you need to buy a new mattress. You're going to look up mattress stores near you. You're probably going to go online looking. You're going to look at reviews. You're going to lay on some mattresses. You're going to maybe go down a website that lists like the best mattresses of 2023. And along that way, you have all sorts of different pings in the journey. So you have Google My Business, where people are like doing a ton of SEO to pump out their brand message so they show up first locally towards you. You also have third-party affiliate sites where people are linking back and getting money for those. You also have people who are reviewing stuff on Amazon and getting paid for that. You also have people who are on social media raving about different mattresses or partnerships. You also have the brand on social media who is trying to push their message out there. You have all these different touch points coming across the way that you want to be aware of, like how your audiences are using the platform, especially when it's a personal brand that you're building. And really, I think stop interrupting. I love this quote. We need to stop interrupting what people are interested in and be what people are interested in. So when I go to TikTok, I'm going to TikTok for a very intentional reason, which is different than my husband, which is different than my sister-in-law. And their feeds show that, right? The algorithms show that. And the algorithms are data. They have all that information, all of that stuff behind us. And so what connects with me despite all of that, and I think the beauty of TikTok's data and TikTok's algorithm is they get so specific on what people are interested in, connecting with those other people, that you start to see those people on TikTok are becoming what people are interested in. And when you look at YouTube and TikTok and those top channels, they're never brands. They're never brands. 95% of statistics are 33% in error. Everybody in cyberspace has an opinion about everything. That's true. I could totally derail with finding out like the best information, but more importantly, the correct information, right? As a PR person, by trade, or I guess by start of my career, like the way that people read is like headlines. I forget the stats, but like most people don't make it past the headlines. And then when you get to the subhead, it's like even less. And then when you get to the first paragraph, even less. And Dennis, I'm sure you know, like probably spot on the stats of that more than I do. But the reason like newspapers and back in the day, like headlines most important, that the editors would chop from the bottom up. So if they literally didn't have space to print in their newspaper or magazine, they would chop the ends of the articles. And so making the headline the most important. And this rings true beyond newspapers, right? With emails, that's why subject lines are so important. That's why the beginnings are so important. That's why hooks are so important when you're creating video, etc. But when we look at that kind of customer journey, it's all about connecting with people in a way that is interesting to them. It's not so much like, here's Meg, what I want to say. It's saying, hey, here's a real problem people are having or something that they're trying to solve for. How can I show up better in their life? How can I help them better in their life? How can I make an impact? So when I'm thinking about my one thing, it's not just my story. It's not just, my vision. It's about the impact. And a lot of times the audience will tell you that as well. What about the growing movement where restaurants and tour sites are banning influencers? This is fascinating. And I saw this actually where they're not allowing like videos inside of certain restaurants. I think it's an interesting play on exclusivity. And like you can go in there. And if you think about it, like Pinterest, it was like when Pinterest first started and you had to be exclusive invite. I remember working with somebody who had been invited and I was like, why was I not invited? Can you send me an invite? And I felt very like out of the know. And I think that like with restaurants banning influencers, in a way, influencers really can like improve businesses, but it can also take away from the experience. I'll use my own personal example. I'm out in Colorado, and when I tell you that there are certain campsites and there's certain like hot springs and there's certain ski runs that like people will guard with their heart to not be known on social media, like stop geotagging your locations. It is true. And like, they're like, keep this to yourself, people. Like, so I think this era of like Instagram versus reality that's happening. And people are starting to see that, in Instagram versus reality, with so much information coming at them, they can start to see that things are maybe a little bit when people are being fake or when they're being sold to, and you have that access and information quicker than ever. So I think to bring this back to the marketing channels is really like, as you build your personal brand, is move from novice to pro. This looks a little different for everybody. So you can launch, grow, scale. So launching is starting with one. So solopreneur, day one, say you have a 9-to-5 job and you're starting to build your own personal brand, but like you have limited time. Like I always advise, like start with one marketing channel, the one that fits best for you, and then scale as you get more comfortable. And part of this is like, how do I choose which one? Is consider where your customers are and what aligns with your goals of bringing that to life. And that's different. So this is where knowing your customer really, really zeroed in on that is huge, because you can say, oh, where is that specific person showing up? Are they showing up at in-person networking events? Are they showing up on social media first? Are they looking to Google? It's very different for each business. And then as you really hone in on that, you'll learn and you'll adapt and things will get quicker and you can add to that. So I like to say it's not never and it's not no, it's a not now. It's a we'll come back to that and add to it. And so to try not to be all things at once. And it's very thoughtful in a way, because I think a lot of people want to like throw spaghetti at a wall and see what works. But when you try to do all of those things, you wind up like psychologically being like, I can't do anything. Oh no, I didn't get to this today. And it's a little bit more damaging than if you just really did one thing well. Like you really just worked on your SEO and your content and getting people to your website. And then we're like, how can I take that content and throw it out to more places? So that's the grow aspect, is how do we grow our brand by expanding our channel presence? So if you're really great at creating long form content, like a video, how can you do that for YouTube and then chop it up into 1-minute segments for TikTok, Instagram, Reels, etc.? If you're really great at creating blogs, how can you take those and create those into quotable graphics for Instagram? How can you turn that into an email newsletter, etc.? And then scale. Now, some people might be able to scale right away. Like you have the resources, you have the team, maybe you're backed by a venture capitalist, whatever it may be. You're like, let's throw it all out there and get all wheels moving in the same direction. That's fantastic. But if you don't start there, and you're like the solopreneur, scaling is a place that we build to as your resources grow and come in, and also as you learn what's working and what's not. So this is where we double down on what's working to scale your brand. We let go of the pieces that aren't serving us. And then we also look at where we can expand. This is where Gary Vaynerchuk, I think, does a fantastic job of, he very rarely just talks like straight into the camera. He's having his whole day recorded and he has the team, he has the resources chopping up everything and sharing it on social media, creating blogs for him, etc. And then, of course, testing and learning where we can go from there. I see a question of how do you adapt and be what people are interested in without taking away from what is authentically you? Yeah, I love that question. And so I think when you are authentically you, you actually like pull people in by sharing those elements of your story. And so it's not an either or in my book. It's about a yes and kind of conversation. And so, or maybe it's in the not now comment I made. So really narrowing in on your focus. If you know that person you're talking to and you're showing up with them, like you're not just gonna talk business. You're gonna be like, hey, how was your day? You're gonna get to know them as a person and you're gonna connect on a different level than just coming in and being like, if I just came into this call and was like, I'm Meg, here are my credentials, here's the brands I've worked for, and I don't have anecdotal information about like being in Colorado or pulling in the relevance of like talking about teachers or talking about real humans, you miss kind of that piece of being authentic, and people know they're being sold to. So if you do too much of one thing, people are going to know that you're being sold to. And so I really think you should be authentic and the way you show up, and it's not an either or. And listen to what people are resonating with. People are really great at like sharing feedback, or something will ping more than others. And they'll be like, oh, I need that. And you can show up and connect in that way. So for me, this might look something like, I'm a mom of a toddler. I live in Colorado and I hike and I snowboard and I love to travel and I love to camp and I like to watch football on Sundays. And at the surface level, you may not know all of those things about me, but if I were to like draw a connection between, oh my God, I was up all night with my toddler because she had bad dreams, I'm so exhausted, but I'm showing up for my business anyway, real deal. Somebody might connect with me because they're like, holy F, like I was up all night. I want to be like her, showing up for business too. How do I do more of that? Versus like just showing up tired and being like, hey guys, I'm so tired. It's not a real story, by the way. She slept through the night last night. But it is a real story that I have a toddler. But being authentically you can show up. But somebody who doesn't have kids or maybe never experienced that or doesn't want kids might be like, enough of the mom talk, Meg. And then maybe I'm not for them. And that's okay too. So it's about being okay with letting go of the people that are not necessarily your audience as well, or connecting with them in a different way. This next slide got a little bit wonky on us, but I'll talk really high level, and then it's my last slide. Is as you expand, this is really in the grow and scale category, is like, how can you get better and better and be more efficient with your time? And it's about repurposing and making the most of our content. This example is, take one single long form piece of content. Say you're writing that SEO from a point of authority, and you're like, how am I going to be the best at getting people from Google over to my business by writing great content? Great. Own that. And then think about, okay, can I make a video from this? Or can I make a video talking about this? Can I pull quote graphics from that blog and share it on social media? Can I tell a story about it? Can I turn that blog into a webinar? Can I turn it into a speech? Can I make an email newsletter out of it? Or can I have it a talking point at like a next networking event that I lead? But it's about thinking about like the expansion from those one pieces and making the most out of your content there to come to life. Okay, so that takes me to the end of everything I have for you guys today. I know we covered a ton of information, but I wanted to leave a couple of minutes at the end in case there's questions that we didn't get to tackle. You guys have been great about sending information in the chat. But yeah, this is a lot of information. So let me know if you guys have questions or there's anything I've skimmed over. And if not, Dennis, I'll turn it over to you as well.
Sounds good. Thanks so much, Meg. Any questions for anyone? We have time for probably one or two questions.
I have about 50,000 questions, but
yeah.
I have about 50,000 questions, but unfortunately, they're all sort of B2B questions. So I'll just give up my space.
Why don't you ask one?
Yeah, go ahead. I have tons of
Well, I'm just curious what channels, I mean, is Instagram or TikTok, et cetera, are they effective for Intel right now? For any other big company?
Yeah.
What are the channels that are working?
So when I work with Intel, I think what's interesting is they let their leaders speak. And so it was a little bit of like, they actually brought me in to do some consulting with some of the leaders in their organization who were interested in writing long form content. So this was for SAP, and SAP had an entire organization where they have an internal system where people can contribute writing blogs to their page and SAP Voices. SAP also has a Forbes Council membership or Forbes brand membership, where if the people wrote really well, they could share that content on Forbes and it could have that kind of amplified reach through that paid channel. But then also the people who were writing were also sharing their content on LinkedIn. And so it's not necessarily like to think about video, but they were creating content for LinkedIn, which is where they were showing up with their network. And then I think what's interesting is depending on the area that you're doing, right? So if you're going by South by Southwest, that might be more interesting for TikTok showing behind the scenes. Or if you're doing something really creative, like a couple of years ago, they did something where they did this whole initiative to clean up the ocean. Talking about that in a way and showing B-roll or showing footage might actually get you in front of like the environmental crowd or the ocean crowd. And showing that. Intel, to answer your question, there is a huge B2B influencer program that all of these folks kind of Intel, Micron, SAP, et cetera, that were of people who are talking about the categories, right? Like machine learning, AI, what you name it. Like there are influencers who are just like in that space, creating content for Twitter, creating content for LinkedIn, creating content on social media, long form video, that speak directly to that B2B audience. And they'll actually connect their leaders with those influencers and sit down and have a great conversation where the influencer can open the door to what's happening at the B2B level of what otherwise could be really complicated materials and information. And I find it fascinating because like before working with them, I was like, oh, I have no idea like what any of that is. And then it opens the door to that.
Okay.
And with
What
that,
about people?
oh, go ahead.
I saw a chat comment about people pretending to connect to the sales lead just to get the sale, even if they can't deliver. That's a don't be like that person. Is someone paid? Yeah, I think that's where it comes to being authentic and being impactful. And really for me, I work with like purpose-driven, impact-driven individuals. Like nobody wants a scam person. There's a little bit of art of like figuring out as you go, but like, I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts on selling something just for the sake of selling something and not being real. Let's just say you're not going to have loyalty and advocacy for the long term because people are going to be like, yep, I was ripped off by that company. And that doesn't feel good
Meg,
for anybody.
I'm sorry. Thanks so much for joining us today. Great talk. You got, you might have seen all the compliments in the chat. And thanks everyone for joining. We'll be continuing next week. So look out for more of our meetups.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.